So I'm going to start with just really looking at why we need to network, because it is so important, but it's often looked at as like an extra thing you can do for your jobs and not necessarily something that people prioritize doing, and something that's kind of, I guess we don't necessarily see the impact of it until later on in our careers. So there's a brilliant model around career development called PI. You'll hear me talk about it a lot. I first discovered it from Inga Bill. She talks about it as something that really helped her get to her role when she was CEO at Lloyd's. And PI essentially breaks down the three different components, the three things we need to be getting right in order to get promoted. So we have performance. You have to do a good job. But of course we do, that's what we're paid to do. So we can just kind of take that for granted. That's like a status quo. We have to be performing. Fortunately for a lot of women in particular, a lot of onus goes on that piece. So working hard. Okay, so you might hear people talk about, how the harder you work, but no one necessarily pays attention to the amount of hard work that you're doing. And there's some truth in that. As long as you are hitting the bar of what's expected for your role and you're performing in that, there's actually stuff outside of your role that gives indications you're ready for a promotion. Because if you think about progression, you doing a good job will help you in that job. And in the early stages of your career, that will generally transfer over to the next job up because it's not a big jump. But as you get further up, the jumps become a lot bigger and it becomes a lot less about the job you are doing and a lot more about your impact on the people around you. So you managing people, influencing people, being able to work with other departments and bring them on board with your ideas and engage with politics and all the other stuff that's inevitable as you get more senior. So you have to be able to do the technical role, but really it's the other sections that can become more important. So we've got image, okay, and then we've got exposure. So the research shows from Harvey Coleman, 10% of the reason we get promoted is because of performance. Take that away, it's a whole other issue, okay? But just 10% is going to essentially be the expectation on that kind of progression. 30% is your image and 60% is your exposure. So essentially 60% is coming from people knowing who you are and what you're all about. We touched on this a little bit on Monday, so I'll try not to repeat myself. Go back to that live if you want to sort of get that context from it. But really today we're going to focus on what we can be doing to get that 60%. So how can we make sure we've got exposure? Through people internally and externally. You'll tend to see often that your short-term rewards come from that exposure internally, but long-term, the more people in the market who know you are, the better as well. Because let's say you do stay at the same company for your whole career, which is incredibly rare now, there will still be other people who move into that company. But let's also assume you're probably going to move around at different points in your career. So as you do move around, being able to go into an interview with someone who really knows who you are and what you're all about, or when they go and talk to people in the market about you before they get that impression, they've already got a good understanding. So the more exposure you have externally, the more it's going to help you longer term. So when we look at networking, I want to first off just kind of pick up this topic of what networking is and how some people enjoy it and how others don't. Just get a little sort of poll in the comments if we can. Just tell me what your thoughts are. One word when you hear the word networking. What do you think of? So it might be a feeling or something you think of as a type of event that you might do. So just one word that sums up networking for you. Awkward. Yeah. A task. Yeah, so that's what you got to tick off the list. Stressful. Forced. Branching. Nice word. Cool. Okay. So essentially, networking is going to produce lots of different feelings for you, and sometimes it's going to feel like this stuff, sometimes it's going to feel forced, sometimes it's going to feel stressful. Yes, sometimes it's going to feel fun, sometimes it feels like communication, you're branching out. It's always different. So all of the different interactions you have under networking will have a different kind of level of satisfaction for you. So you personally will enjoy certain things more than others. What we tend to do is give this term networking as though it's kind of always the kind of forced, awkward thing, and therefore we assume it's going to be an effort. But actually, a lot of networking you probably do without really labelling it networking, because you are enjoying it, because it is fun. And what we want to do is move more of your networking into that side where you're doing it without consciously thinking about it. There's always going to be some that's a little bit more effort, but the more we can make it natural, the more you're going to be able to do it. So let's take a look firstly at what you might find natural. Now, Myers-Briggs is the research around the word extrovert and introvert. So most of us know this word, and extroverts and introverts were designed actually through the research of Myers-Briggs to talk about how we get our energy. Now, when it comes to extroverts and introverts, we in society have misused these words. We've mislabeled them. And let me tell you the way that we commonly might label them. We might talk about introverts being shy, and extroverts being confident, introverts being people that don't want to go to networking events, and extroverts people that do. We generalise in those areas, and that's not really where this comes from at all. It's all about your energy. So let me explain to you with an analogy first of all. So I want you to imagine you have a robot. Okay, there's a robot living in your house, and this robot is solar powered. It goes out for the day and it picks up all this energy. It's getting lots of energy from the environment. As it's out there, it's engaging with people, it's talking to people. Because it's solar powered, that's giving it a boost. When it comes home and it's out from the solar, it's draining its energy. When it's sat on its own, when it's reading a book, when it's having some quiet time, the energy starts dipping down. Okay, so this would be your extroverted robot. Whereas your introverted robot will go out for the day, still go around talking to people, be just as comfortable in different settings. But when they come home, they're going to plug themselves into the wall. That's how they're going to boost up their energy. So essentially, they get their energy when they are on their own. So having that time to reflect, to process what's happened, to think things through, that's when the introvert is going to feel a bit more energized. So when we go to a networking event, for some people, for extroverts, it will be energizing. You walk in and get a buzz out of it, start getting more excited, talking faster, and kind of really enjoying that situation sometimes, not always. And introverts will actually see that as an energy draining experience. So what we need to do is think about the networking that works best for you. And really, we want to do a bit of both for everyone, because there are different ways that introverts can network and get more energy from it. And this really comes down to the separation of whether we're gregarious or whether we're intimate. And it tends to fall with the extrovert introvert, but not all extroverts are gregarious, not all introverts are intimate. There can be a crossover here. So if you are a gregarious person, what this means is you probably want to go to a networking room with 20 people and talk to all those 20 people and hand your card out to 20 people and talk to them all for a little bit of time, meet lots of new people for the first time, and enjoy that experience as a kind of social quick interaction. As an introvert, that probably feels very draining, even just describing the scenario. But what the introvert will gain from is having that intimate conversation. So let's have a coffee afterwards. Let's sit down for half an hour and have a one-on-one where I can find out a lot more meaningful conversation and feel like there's a lot more value and genuine interest in what's going on. So I'm an extrovert, but I get really introverted at events where I don't know anyone. Have you got any tips and ways around that? Yes, we're totally going to go through that today. Now, I'm just going to pick up your language there as well, if that's all right, Rosie, because you said I'm an extrovert, but I get very introverted. What you might find there is you're an extrovert, but you get a little bit out of your comfort zone when you don't know anyone. So what we want to do is just avoid switching it as though when I'm confident I'm an extrovert, when I'm shy I'm an introvert, because it's not like that. So you could be introverted at those events and walk in and find someone and have some good conversation there, and you've thought through what you're going to talk through before, and you're listening more than you're talking. So we want to avoid the kind of view of we're switching from one to the other, but instead you're an extrovert, that's your preference. But sometimes you're going to be outside your comfort zone, and that in this case might impact you by meaning that you say less. So we've got the intimate and gregarious. So what I want you to do firstly is just take a moment to think about, for you, which of these do you most associate yourself with? So let me know in the comments if you think you're more gregarious or if you are more intimate. So would you prefer a social event with a group of people, or would you prefer a one-to-one coffee as the kind of two ends of the scale? And if you don't want to try and spell gregarious, just put G. It's fine. So G or I for intimate in the comments. Cool. So more intimate. Just wait for a couple more of you to give me a indication. I reckon we've probably got a split room with the numbers we're on. G from Lauren, intimate, yeah. Okay, yeah, bit of a split. So there's another level when we look at Myers-Briggs. It depends. You can absolutely be both. There's a scale, so you might be like one end of a scale and you're that pretty much all the time, or you can kind of be in the middle and you can flip around with it a little bit. So you can totally be both. It's not one or the other. Okay, so the other piece of this that's quite useful to look at is essentially whether we initiate or whether we receive. So under Myers-Briggs, some individuals will be categorised as initiators, and these will be the individuals that walk in a room and go, "Hi, I'm Sam," and they lead that introduction, and they're quite comfortable walking up to people and saying, "Hi, my name is." There will also be people who walk in the room and think, "Okay, I really want someone to talk to me, but I don't want to have to go up and start a conversation with someone. Please, somebody come and talk to me." They are the majority, the vast majority of people at networking events, even the extroverts, fall into that receiver piece from all of the times that I go through this. So what we're going to see is a room full of people. Let's say we've got 100 people in that room. You've probably got somewhere between like 15 to 20 initiators, and then all the others, receivers, waiting for someone to come and approach them. So when you're standing there and thinking, "Oh, this is like, I feel uncomfortable, how do I go and start a conversation with somebody?" Everybody else, the vast majority, thinking the exact same thing. So what I'm going to do is give you a few clues on, firstly, how to be a receiver that will get approached. So to stay in your comfort zone for this kind of first stage, what you want to do is just kind of be in the room and know that someone's going to walk up and talk to you. Now, when someone is initiating, what they're going to do is walk in the room and look around the room and think, who can I go up to that is not going to reject me? Because just because they like initiating doesn't mean they like rejection. So they're going to want to pick someone who looks like they're keen for that conversation. The issue is, if you are a receiver, what you'll probably do is stand around trying to look busy, as though you're not waiting for someone to come and talk to you, because that makes you look more relaxed, right? So you might stand there and you might like be on your phone typing away because you're really busy doing that rather than waiting for someone to talk to you, or you might be hovering around by the drinks or by the food. What you want to do instead, okay, is look to the people around the room, make eye contact back at them. So as they're looking around, you can look back and just smile and nod, and then they think, "Oh, great, that's my person," and then they'll walk over to you. So if you are a receiver, rather than having to walk up to somebody, if that feels completely daunting, just start with the idea of looking around, making eye contact so people come up to you as well. But I'm going to give you some practical tips on how to actually try and avoid that situation to begin with. It's the way I like to do it. Because I probably am more of an initiator than the majority, but I'm not always an initiator. I certainly don't always want to walk in a room and start a conversation. Much prefer if people come up to me, but I'll just do it rather than stand on my own. So what I do now, when I'm going to an event, I'm going to always have a look at who's going in advance. As much as I can get that information. You quite often can. It's quite often, even if you just open up the invitation, you'll see all the names in there of who's accepted. And then you can look through for some people that you recognise. And if I look through the list and I can see sort of 10 names that I really recognised, I'm fine. I probably won't even message anyone, because I'm like, I know that out of that 10 people, there's going to be a few of them that make it to the day, so I'm fine in terms of contacting people. But if there's only one or two, then I might send them a message and be like, "Hey, are you going to this, or do you want to meet beforehand?" So that I'm not arriving on my own. But then arriving on my own, I've got a little technique for. So what I do when I'm arriving on my own is always arrive on time or just a few minutes before. Because what happens at that point is there's kind of a flood of people coming in. So for example, I was at an event with the ISC last week. And as I arrived about 5 minutes early, the people in front of me walking up the stairs were also going to the same place. As I was putting my coat in, other people were there. All of us will just come in at the same time. And that makes it really easy to start a conversation because you're not having to approach anyone mid-conversation because you're all just there, you've all just arrived together. So if you arrive on time or a little early, then during that sign-in process, as you get through the lifts, as you hold doors for each other, there is so much opportunity to just sort of meet people without having to start that conversation. The mistake most commonly made in this is when you see an event, you think, oh, I'll arrive once it gets going. So then there's less pressure to start a conversation. I find that much harder. If you arrive half an hour in, people have already kind of joined their groups and so on, and it's fine if you're comfortable initiating. But if you're building yourself up, if you haven't done this for a long time and you're looking to feel more confident doing it, absolutely try and get there right at the beginning. Settle yourself in, because that first 10-15 minutes where you feel a bit awkward, not many people are there for that. Half an hour in, as there's lots of people there, you're right settled in. So you give yourself that kind of warm-up time as early in the evening as possible. So there are lots of external networking groups across the market that are really worth signing up to, and a lot of them are coming back thick and fast. So I just mentioned ISC. This is a women's group. They do have a free level of membership. Their general membership level is free for people to sign up to, and then they've got paid for levels, which companies tend to sponsor people to join, and then you get more events, more training and so on in the programs. There is a group called iWin, which is a group for everybody. This initially was set up as a women's group, but not exclusively for women. It had a women's committee, but now it's a mixed committee, mixed events. The idea is to sort of support the progression of women in the market, but not by doing that exclusively. So anyone can go along to their events. And they do actually have an event tomorrow night. So if any of you are in the city tomorrow, please go onto iWin's LinkedIn page and sign up to that. Great opportunity to meet people face to face. From experience, their events are usually very well sponsored, which always means the food's good, if that's a swear for anybody else. I hope they meet that expectation if I put it out there for everybody, but that's usually the case with them. But there's also networking groups that are a lot more specific to your role. So for example, you might want to join the under 35 reinsurance group, the under 35 non-marine group, the under 35 marine group, the Institute of London's Young Members Committee, Engine. So there's a whole list of these. In fact, I've listed them. They're on our website. If you go into the very first page of our blog, you'll find them all in there. You can go in and sign up to these groups. And then what I recommend you do is sign up to a load of them that you find you're interested in. Then you're on the mailing list. As the events come in, you can choose which you want to go to. Just because you're on the mailing list doesn't mean you're committed to going to any of their events. But you want the option. You can see the things come in, you can see whether or not it's something of interest to you, if it meets your diary, get the balance between face-to-face, online, whatever your mixture you want to do in there as well. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do, we're going to do a little bit of self-coaching here again now. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to just give it a pen and paper, jot down your answers to these, we get an idea of what you want to do with your network. Are there networking groups suitable for over 35s? Absolutely. So iWin, definitely. ISC is at all stages of your career. If you really want to kind of do what I sort of describe as more long-term networking, then the WCI is brilliant. So that's something I'm a member of. It's the Insurance Livery Group, the worshipful company of insurers, and it's all about really you join with a view that you're probably going to be a member for decades. So you meet people over and over again. I love it because if you meet someone for the first time, you know you're going to see them again in a few months' time, and then again and again, and maybe meet each other's children, or like you kind of have a bit more of a long-term connection with people in it because of the view of the way the membership works in terms of it's for your whole career is the intention. So that's a really good one. If anyone's interested in that, I always say just send me a message and I'll have a call with you, explain how it works, because it is livery groups. There's a little bit more to it than the kind of standard networking groups where you kind of come and go. So I'm very happy to talk you through that. But iWin is probably the one of the top ones I would recommend at the moment. And LM Forums are another good one. LM standing for London Market Forums. They do events throughout the year as well. Okay, so if you've got your pen and papers ready. Right, I want you to jot down the answers to these just to give yourself a chance to reflect and a chance to think of some actions. So, what networking have you done recently? And this networking could be one-to-ones, could be external, could be internal. Okay. You should just have a think about what that looks like. What about it did you enjoy? What about it did you not enjoy? And again, that's a good one to chuck in the comments if you want me to give you some pointers on it. Otherwise, over to you for it. What could you do to improve that? So how could you improve the aspects of it you didn't enjoy? Now, we take a view of your network as it stands at the moment. I want you to pick 3 relationships you would like to improve. What action can you take to improve those relationships? And when are you going to take it? Now, when it comes to actions, I want you to think about this as though these can just be little things. Now, relationships, the value on them in terms of how meaningful they are and how much you've invested in them is going to go up and down. So if we compare this to a bank balance, it makes it easy to understand the kind of concept of credit and debit. So you have a relationship with someone, worked with them for years, they're not in your department, and at the beginning of lockdown, it turns out that your departments don't have much to overlap, you just used to sit near them in the office. So you've barely seen them in the last 2 years. So relationships started up here, but because you've barely seen them, it's dropped down. Okay? We've taken things out of the relationship because we haven't been invested in it, we haven't been familiar, checking in and so on. It's gone a little bit stale. It's still there, it's not disappeared because you've got the history to keep it as it is, but it's certainly dropped down from where it was. So what we want to do essentially is put back into that relationship, boost up the credit. So what we want to do there maybe is, hey, I'm going back into the office and I've so missed our conversations in the morning. Please let me know which days you're in. It'd be lovely to catch up with you one morning when we're in at the same time. Even just by sending that email, that invitation, you're going to get a little bit of a boost. And then if you do get that coffee in, you'll get very quickly back to where it was. Okay? Now that's where a relationship started already from a good point. But when you're starting from the ground up, you're starting almost with nothing and you're having to build this up bit by bit. So if we're starting with nothing, then it's making sure that when somebody else asks us for something, we meet their expectations, we exceed their expectations, we're helpful, we're friendly, we remember personal details about them, we invite them to things, we say yes when they invite us to things. All of these things are going to boost up the relationship. But also, you can be doing things that withdraw. So they sent you an email, you haven't replied to them in 10 days. Down a bit. They invited you to an event, but you didn't come. Down a bit. They asked you to help them with something and you couldn't help them at that time. Down a bit. They asked you for a favour that you couldn't help with. Down a bit. Every time that something goes against the relationship, we're just having little nudges, but they can also go back up. Okay? So what's quite useful to do is when particularly got some real key relationships you want to look at, is think about what's happened recently. Where would you rank that relationship? So if we take just a scale of 0 to £100 is your scale, what figure would you put on that relationship? So the person you see all the time that's absolutely brilliant with, you could ask them for anything, you'd probably be near the £100. The new joiner in your team that you've barely spoken to, or the person you met at that networking event 3 weeks ago that you haven't followed up with, probably near the 0. And what we want to do is just look, how can we add a couple of pounds each time? It's not a view of going from 0 to 100. It's just a view of occasional nudging and just doing this as and when we can. So something I really like to do now, I've got a whole kind of list of people. I haven't written it down, but actually I'm going to. It'd be very useful too. But they're kind of memory people that I really love seeing in the city, particularly people that used to be on my grad scheme, for example, that whenever I'm in, I want to see them in person. I want to catch up with people. So if I'm in for a meeting, if I'm in for a course, then if I take that the rest of the day, I'm going to message around people and say, hey, are you free this time, or this time. It'd be great to see you over the next few weeks. And bit by bit, get back in touch in person with everybody that I want to. So my view is kind of, if I'm in London, because there's so much more impact when it's in person. If I'm in London, I want to be filling that day with coffees, lunches, and introductions to people in person that I've only met online, so on. So I can essentially boost those relationships back up, because I feel like they're not where they used to be before lockdown, and I don't like that. I like them to be back where they were. Okay, so we're coming to the half-hour point. So we've got some time for questions. If anyone's got any questions you want me to cover. If you are signing up to any networking events that I've recommended, you can always ask me if I'm going, because I do try and go to, I probably try and go to at least one every other week in person at the moment. It's probably where I'm looking. I haven't got any this week, but I've got 2 next week. So always happy to arrive with you if you're looking at doing that. Hey Tracy, you're just coming in near the end, but these are all recorded sessions, so you can watch them back on the news feed afterwards if you want to go through what we've been through. But I'm still doing questions. Anyone has any? Okay, I want to just get to the point that hopefully we've got an action for everyone, because networking is essentially comfort zones, right? Comfort zones are so important. In fact, this is really my number one tip when I talk about careers with people. The more you are out of your comfort zone, the more you will progress. It's that simple from what I see. If you stay in your comfort zone, you are going to stay put with what you are doing. You probably stay, in a good position with what you are doing, but you're not going to be pushing yourself out of that. So if you want to look for progression, you need to be getting outside your comfort zone to the point you're comfortable doing it. Okay, so if you're looking at something and go, oh, I haven't done that before, then that's a good thing. That's something I want to do. Oh, that makes me a bit nervous. That's something I want to do. So if we are looking to get outside of the comfort zones, and we're taking networking as the example, for the last 2 years, you may never have been to a face-to-face networking event. So you might have done this dozens of times before lockdown, but because over that 2-year period you haven't, your comfort zone has actually shrunk. They don't just grow, they do shrink. So all of a sudden you feel a bit uncomfortable doing it. What you want to do is look for opportunities to start doing it, just pushing it out bit by bit. So we don't want to go, right, I haven't been to anything, now I'm going to do 4 in a month. Okay, that's just probably going to feel a lot. So what we want to do is think, right, I'm going to sign up to 3 mailing lists. I'm going to go to 1 event, and I'm going to schedule 1 coffee and kind of grow it out a little bit. Get a bit of that buzz back. Remind yourself it isn't that bad. The worst case scenario never happens. And then push it out a little bit more bit by bit. So be kind to yourself. If you're finding you're nervous about this, absolutely you're not going to be on your own. These networking events, the dropout rates are incredibly high at the moment, actually. It's something that I'm scared about, in all honesty, because I know the dropout rates in part will be because people think they're going to be in the office and then aren't in the office. But I'm also worried there's a lot of people that haven't done it for so long that they say yes and they want to go, and then it pops up in their diary and they think, I don't want to go now, and then they cancel last minute. So if that's you, if you find yourself doing that, please just go. You've only got to go for the first time again once. Once you've been again for the first time since lockdown, you've done it. The next time will be the second time. You know what you're doing. You've done it again. So we just want to get over that as soon as possible. Hey, Glow ladies. If anyone's on this, I'm going to direct you to Glow Brown Global, who have just jumped in this live as well. They both used to work in insurance, in HR, and they have quit the market to focus on an app that's going to help people with gratitude. So acknowledging things you are grateful for. So if you don't follow them, go and give them a follow, because they've got some exciting plans. It's going to be fun watching them. All right, I will see you tomorrow for the last session on speaking up in meetings. And have a good day. I might see some of you. I've got an ISC session later today. I reckon a couple of you were on the list there. I might see a couple of you there as well. But otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow.